Electoral Area Services Committee of Wednesday, March 10th. We do have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. And on the adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Is there anything else?
I would, Mr. Chair, I would
Yes,
just like to ensure that the 2 grants in aid under the addendum will also be considered in the agenda, and I think it would be logical to move them up to item 7, along with the other grant in aid. So
Okay,
to accept the addenda and move the 2 grants in aid up to item 7.
There's a seconder to that?
Second.
Any objections? Okay.
I have another item, Mr. Chair.
You'll have to, just 1 second, Nova, if you'll have to remind me of that, because I'm not putting it into my agenda. Okay, Nova, go ahead.
Thanks. I would just request that the committee go in camera afterwards and ask for a brief update on an in-camera matter that we discussed at our last meeting. Just given its time sensitivity, I'd like to know what's happening with it, please.
Okay, Tom, do we have we have to do some sort of motion right now? Say it's under section such and such or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, no, I don't believe so. I think if there is a desire of the part of the committee to have that session, I do believe has.
Okay, so we just do it at the time when we get there.
If that's the committee's wish, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Nova, that's fine.
Thank you.
So once again, remind me when we get there. Okay, so on the adoption of the public agenda, is there anything else? All those in favor? Or sorry, anybody opposed? We have no petitions or delegations. We'll move on to the adoption of the previous minutes, and I believe you had something to say here, Brenda.
Yes, I'm just looking for them in the minutes. Now, these are the minutes. Are they the minutes of Wednesday, February 10th?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so under item 2121 and the motion 2221, that it be received and that the committee recommend the development variance permit be denied and staff work with the applicant to comply with the bylaw. I don't think that was the intent at the meeting. I would like to put forward an amendment, and I believe it was Director Abrams stepped out of the chair. He stepped in and out of the chair.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. You're trying to make an amendment to the minutes?
Yeah.
Well, we can't do that. I mean, these are the minutes of the meeting. It's well beyond making amendments. I know there's a report on this item coming up, but we can't make an amendment to minutes.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, these are accurately recording what actually happened at the last committee meeting.
If I may step as the chair.
Yes.
Actually, what I believe Brenda is trying to do is correct the minutes. That is allowed.
Yes, but if these
that
are...
is what she's trying to make an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just so we're clear. So what you see under resolution 2321, which is I think the one under discussion, that is an actual verbatim transcription of what the committee voted on last meeting.
So
okay, may I step down from the chair, please?
Yes,
Brenda, will you please take the chair?
yes, I've got the chair.
Okay, so if I may speak, I've got my hand up,
Yep,
sort of.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what's recorded in the minutes is that the committee recommended the development variance permit, be denied, staff work with the applicant to comply with the bylaw. And it was carried. The motion should have been recorded as that staff work with the applicants to come to some sort of resolution to this issue. Those were the words that I uttered that day out of the chair. So that's what I would expect to see in the minutes.
Mr. Chair, that's not the motion. That's not the motion that was voted on. We have a recording of it. So we cannot change the motion as it was voted on.
Mr. Chair, do you want to take the chair again and I'll make a reconsideration motion then?
I'd
Mr.
like
Chair,
to speak to the matter.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
just proceed, if I may. This item is on the agenda. It's the first item up for consideration. At that time, the committee could decide on some other course of action if it wished to do that. So that is an option available to you if you wish.
Okay, so I have Director Anderson, and who else wants to speak? Director Anderson?
Who's the chair? I thought you handed it back to Director Abrams.
Well, I asked him. He didn't say yes or no. Do you want to take the chair back, Mr. Chair?
You can go ahead for a minute. Brenda, go ahead.
Okay, so Director Anderson.
Thanks. I mean, I clearly defer to staff who have a recording, but my memory is in line with that. I do remember that Director Abram put forward something different, and we had quite a discussion about whether that was lawful because staff could only indeed enforce the bylaw. And this does represent what I remember. So I think probably best to leave this as is, and then when this item comes up in this agenda, make some different action if the committee wants to.
Okay, if I may. Yes, Dave did have, he interjected a number of times the words within the bylaw whenever I got to the part about comply with the bylaw. And he said within the bylaw, within the bylaw. And that's fine. There was no intent to work outside the bylaw. The idea was, the application was a development variance permit. That's within the bylaw. What was being discussed was trying to have staff work with the applicants to come to some compromise within the bylaw, according to Dave's words, that would allow the development variance permit to be more palatable to breaking the bylaw in general for Quadra Island, because it does, I mean, the development variance permit is outside of the confines of what the bylaw says. So that's why it's been applied.
Mr. Chair, just listen to what you said, breaking the bylaw. We cannot do that as staff. If committee wants to give us direction to approve a variance, then that's what we'll do. But I mean, we cannot break the bylaw.
No, I wasn't asking you to, Dave. I was asking you to work with staff and the applicant to create a development variance permit, which would be within the bylaw, that would be less obtrusive to the rest of the neighborhood. That was the intent. And you objected to the wording, but the words that I said, and you say you have it recorded, I guess you should go back to the recording and see if I, dreamed this or what. But I, very carefully in my notes have the staff work with the applicants to come to some sort of resolution to this issue. And then you added within the bylaw, and that's fine. That's within the bylaw. DVPs are within the bylaw.
So, Mr. Chairman,
so that's all, I just wanted it to be accurate in the minutes. If you don't think it's a big,
It is accurate.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that when this comes up in today's meeting, that the committee simply reconsider this motion, and if they wish, pass a different motion if they wish. I think that would be the easiest route to take rather than to try and massage a previously passed resolution, which is, in my opinion, is totally accurate based on the recording of the meeting. That might be the simplest way to handle this.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So
Pass the chair back to you, Director Abram.
thank you, Brenda. Okay, so on the minutes, back up here. Adoption of the previous minutes. Anyone opposed? Okay, business arising from the minutes. There will be business arising from the minutes in the consideration of the item down the way. Okay, public considerations, we don't have any. Staff reports, development, variance permit, application, Crombie. Gee,
Move
here we are. Okay, so,
Move receipt of the report.
okay, and I guess I should step down from the chair on this one. If you'd like to
Okay,
take the chair.
so I've got the chair. Any speakers?
Yes, please.
Okay, Director Abram.
Okay, so the idea was for staff to work with the applicants and come to some kind of compromise or whatever if they could. If they couldn't, well, fine, but we would just have to vote yes or no. The idea was to try and get it to a more neutral place, and that didn't take place. It didn't happen. So the applicants sent to myself and staff some options that they would be willing to consider for the development variance permit being changed. And I'm not sure how you change that, if they have to reapply for a new development variance permit, if they can amend the one that is on the books or what. But basically, I'm not sure if staff distributed this to directors, if it's on the agenda. I have it on my page, but it's a letter to Mr. Leach, and then it goes on and it gets to 4 options. Option 2 is what I would like to move, and I was asking earlier, Edie, but I didn't get an answer. I believe I did send you an email that was a motion. Do you have that? It was a motion to approve the variance application. Do you have that on the board?
I do have it. I'll bring it up right now.
Okay, thank you.
So just for clarity, if I can jump in, Mr. Chair. So the recommendations before you were supported by EASC, brought to the board, then they was referred back to EASC. So there has been no resolution or direction provided to the board. So just so you know, staff do not have any direction in the form of a resolution from the board. And so this presumably would be that, and then it would go to the board and get voted on.
I would assume that's the process, yes. So this motion, which you have before you, is, I believe, it's the same as what I have written in front of me. It's fairly long. It's about 6 lines long. But it changes the configuration of the buildings on the property and stays closer to the actual bylaw sizes and regulations at the present time. And the last line that you have, Edie, is that this excludes, I can't see, oh yes, I can see it. Yes, it's got the whole thing there. Okay, so I would move that if there's a seconder.
Madam Chair,
Is-
we just call receipt first.
Yeah, I'll call the question on receipt. Is anyone opposed to receive the report? Hearing none, it's received. And now the motion.
Okay, the motion as printed on the board.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
moved and seconded, the motion on the board.
Is there any
Um,
discussion?
Any discussion?
Oh, sorry.
That's
Yes.
okay. Any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, Director Anderson?
I'd love to defer to Director Abram first if he's willing to, because I don't have the email from the applicant or any of the backstory to it. If he has anything more to add, otherwise I'll speak.
Okay.
Well, the email is lengthy. And it's basically about working with the immediate neighbors to deal with any of their issues, and moving on from there. And apparently there has been discussion in the neighborhood over these 4 options, and the one that was most likely to be supported by the community was the option that is proposed before you on the board. And the applicants, of course, would like to clear the decision and the direction so that they can get on with the process of going from here to the board and then go from there.
Okay, I just realized that perhaps I was remiss in not requiring that the motion 2321 that's in the minutes, that was being disputed in the minutes. I think we should rescind that motion before we make this new motion. I would defer to our corporate officer if that's the correct procedure, but I don't think we could have 2 conflicting motions on the books. We need to rescind 23, the previous motion that was discussed in the minutes, and then move this one. Am I right, Tom?
Madam Chair, I believe that would be preferable. It would certainly remove any, or, reduce any possibility of confusion as to what the direction is from the committee going forward to the board, to not have 2 motions that could potentially be seen as conflicting with each other.
Yeah. So before we entertain Director Abrams' motion, may I have a motion to rescind the motion in the minutes that was being questioned?
I would like to discuss this motion. I'm more than happy for you to hold off on the voting on it, but I think that because they're so linked, I'd like to have a thorough discussion of this one before you do that, Madam Chair.
Okay. Go ahead then.
Thank you. So I completely support, in principle, there being 2 houses allowed on a lot, or a much larger cabin allowance. I think it's really professionally irresponsible that we've got these planning documents that are 20 years old. But clearly they're not up to date with the times, and so we're grappling with this on a sort of case-by-case basis rather than on a comprehensive basis. That being said, I think it's very uncomfortable still to set such a large exemption to the regulations on the books. So I'm wanting to get clear about what workspace means. I don't really know the configuration of the building, and so this proposal that you have on the floor, Director Abram, I don't know what it would actually mean. And I'd like to hear from staff, in our zoning bylaw. I mean, I certainly have workspace in my house. Does that mean shop space? Does that mean textile workspace? Certainly my understanding is if it's under one roof, it doesn't really matter. Now, it does our zoning bylaw say that if you have a garage or some other space under the building, it doesn't count toward your square footprint. So I just feel like I need a little bit more context before responsibly voting on this. I clearly understand that time, they want to move on and finish the building and live in it. And That being said, I think the precedent nature of this is really important, and unless there's a willingness to update the overall zoning bylaw, which I think is well overdue, I do think this is worth doing right, and I'd like to see staff's opinion on this before we move it. And so I would like to, however, it'll take another month, refer this to staff so they could compare it to the zoning bylaw and let us know what the zoning bylaw would generally allow for square footage consideration because this seems to be like a creative workaround to the thing that we denied a month ago, and I'm feeling uncomfortable about that.
Well, if I can, Mr. Chair, just jump in quickly and say this is the first time staff has seen the motion. So one thing we would do is refer to legal to see if this is even an enforceable variance for a number of the reasons Director Anderson just mentioned.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes. Go.
Okay, so I'm not sure what Dave meant by this is the first time I've seen it. I sent this in, I don't know, a week and a half ago. So, it has been in your hands. The emails have certainly all been in your hands because they all went to you, Dave, personally, and to Aniko. So, there has been that opportunity. And I think, Nobi, you bring up a good point, and this is that this would basically be the segue into looking at this particular issue, not as a precedent-setting issue, but as a change in the demographics and the needs of Quadra Island. And, all you have to do is look at this and see that it's a very reasonable compromise, and it should be looked at as part of our zoning bylaw in the bigger picture. But at this particular time, I see no reason to hold up these people if, a number of months down the road, we're going to turn around and change the whole bylaw to allow exactly this. So it seems logical to me to just go ahead and do this, put it forward as, hey, we did it this way and it worked fine, and go from there. And the workspace that we're talking about here is not, this is not a planer mill. These are virtual workers that work between here and other places in the world. So, we're talking computer businesses here. That's the workspace that's being talked about. So I believe that to do as the chair said, which was to rescind the motion from the previous meeting, and then move forward with this one so that we don't have any conflicting motions or whatever on the floor.
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is rescind the previous. Director Anderson?
Just a question through to staff, just on timing. Director Abram mentioned that, if in a few months the zoning bylaw is updated, I mean, there's potentially a number of situations where something that is technically out of zoning compliance might be in zoning compliance when this bylaw is updated. So I'm curious if there's any anticipation about that timeline, and if there has been substantive discussion on Quadra that is leaning strongly towards this kind of thing being permitted in an update to the overall zoning bylaw. I would like to hear that now, at which point perhaps we just put this on hold for some number of months. But I don't have any indication of that. So I'm just asking through to staff, is there a zoning bylaw update currently happening on Quadra? And if so, do you anticipate that there's a likely possibility that this kind of thing would be allowed in that update? And if not, and if so, could we put this on hold? And if not, then it seems a bit disingenuous.
I'll let Aniko answer that.
Thank you.
Aniko?
Thank you to the chair. At this time, there's no planned update to the Quadra Island zoning bylaw. I can't specifically speak to what the appetite is of the community with respect to this sort of arrangement or allowance within the zoning bylaws. Certainly the village plan speaks to some sort of, live work models that would be supported through the neighborhood plan. The general OCP isn't as specific to that. We're aware that housing, again, like we spoke of, the last couple times that this item has been brought forward, we're aware that housing is an issue on Quadra. We're aware that people want to be able to remain on Quadra or come back to Quadra, help with the economics of the island and work from the island. And obviously right now that's happening a lot more. So, I mean, I could say that, yeah, I would think that there would be some appetite. However, I also have to keep in mind that we have 6 or 7 individuals that are currently against this application in the general area. So, we just kind of have to take that all into consideration.
So my final comment on that would just be that, so if the zoning bylaw isn't being updated right now, which I was sort of led to believe by Director Abrams' comment, it's a larger issue, but we need to get on with updating these plans. And which is why ultimately I voted against the budget, is because we don't have long range planning capacity to be updated. So I would really ask that this electoral area committee have a really serious discussion about how we're going to address these plans, because it's not okay to have them be 10 to 25 years old.
Okay, well, Director Anderson, if I could just interject, we're not here to discuss the timing of the zoning bylaw reviews. We're here to discuss the Crombie application specifically and what we can do with the fact that they were previously denied in the minutes of the last meeting, and Director Abram wants to correct that situation, and he's proposed a motion. So we need to stick to the narrow scope of what's on the agenda here, which is not talking about when we're going to do bylaw reviews.
So the only reason I brought it up was because Director Abram made a comment that it may well be permissible in a few months, which would indicate.
I understand that, but really what's on the agenda is what we're considering. So
right.
I would like to just go back to that. And so what we would need to do to move this forward would be to rescind the previous motion in the previous meeting. I think it was 2321. Is that the number on it? So we need a motion to rescind that before we can move forward with anything else.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to rescind. Any further discussion?
Yeah, procedural question for staff.
Sure.
If that, would it also be possible to leave that motion on the, I just don't understand the motion that Director Abram now is proposing is sort of an amendment to that variance, or a passing of the variance as is with some understanding that isn't therefore written into it. So I'm just wondering, is there some way of denying the variance as presented and offering them an opportunity to apply for a different variance? Because I don't think it's reasonable to amend something with some understanding that isn't written into it. So I just wonder procedurally if there's a cleaner way of going about this stuff.
Madam Chair, procedurally, right now the committee is essentially constrained by a motion on the books passed legitimately at the last meeting, which talks about basically trying to work with the applicant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what the motion currently on the floor would do, if it's passed, would basically take that off of the blackboard. It would clean that slate, and the committee would be back essentially at square one in terms of what does it wish to recommend be done with this particular application. So procedurally, that's the where we're at currently with the application.
But my question was about approving versus amending versus reapplying for a development variance from the either corporate or staff department.
Just a minute. Sorry. Let Director Anderson just finish, and then I'll have Director Abram.
It's just it's not about content. It's about a procedural matter. Would it be advisable from the planning department's perspective to try to amend a variance that's already been applied for, or ask for a reapplication if it's substantively different?
Mr. Chair, if I can, or Madam Chair, sorry, if I can jump in. This isn't
Sure.
really that complicated. There was a motion, it's being rescinded. The staff report recommended denying a variance permit. So if the committee wants to, in essence, write a motion that creates a variance, that's up to the committee.
Okay, so back to the rescinding motion. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Are there any objections to rescinding the previous motion, 2321? Hearing none, it's rescinded, and now we can deal with any further motions. So Director Abram has put forward a motion, and it's seconded by Director Wally. And does everybody understand the motion, and is everyone okay with voting on it yet?
I would respectfully request that we refer this to staff and to legal, because I am not confident that this is possible or advisable, even if we all like the intent of it. So although I might support the content of it at a later time, I couldn't now if the vote was forced.
So, Madam Chair, we as staff have an obligation to consult with legal on this, because this is quite a unique variance, I guess, recommendation developed by the director, and we need to confirm that this would be legal and enforceable. So we'll do that anyways.
Okay. So we can still vote on this, and we can still vote on this, and then if legal advises against it, it can always be reconsidered.
Yeah, it will come up at the board. So this motion, between now and when it comes up to the board, we will go get a legal opinion on its enforceability. Yeah.
Okay. Is that all right with you, Director Abram?
Yeah, just to have a comment though.
Okay, Director Abram. Yep.
Okay, so this has been, this was not developed by the director, just to correct that for the recording. This was developed by the applicants in consultation with their legal. So, you know, they, I would assume, have gone over our bylaw in order to make that work. And secondly, referring this off for a number of, God knows how many months till we do a bylaw total revision, would completely dissolve the possibility of these young men being able to move back to Quadra Island and live and work on Quadra Island in two new residences that, or two new residences that are being developed by this permit. So, you know, I think that would be totally unfair to refer it on some technicality, which we have already been told by our CAO, it is going to be looked into for sure already. So what is our concern? I would say, let's just move on.
So just if I may, not to, you know, continue on this too long, just for clarity, applicants don't make resolutions. They 100% only come from directors. So Director Abram, this is your resolution. We don't take resolutions from anyone else other than directors. And I did say we'll have a legal opinion before the next board meeting. So.
Right, I understand that, and that's what I just reinforced. I said that you would be doing a legal opinion anyway, so why are we quibbling over it? And fine, you know, process-wise, if that's what the way you look at it, that this came from me, that's fine. It came to me from them, from their lawyers and them. So I'm just passing it on to you as a director. And I would like to see it pass, and I'm hoping that we can just move on.
Okay, I think we all understand what will happen if this goes through, and I would like to call the question on the motion, please. Are there any directors opposed to this motion?
With great regret, yes.
One opposed? Okay, thank you. And hearing no other opposition, that motion carries. So I'll pass the chair back to you, Director Abram.
Thank you, Director Lee, for stick handling that one. Okay, and we're on to Electoral Area D. First of all, I guess I have to ask Tom, is there anything else that needs to be done with this? Any other subsequent motions or anything that are going to be needed?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe so. Staff have indicated that there will be review with legal counsel whether this can be presented to the board without reservation or not. So I think the committee's intent was clear by passing the motion, and staff will look into it before it gets to board.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip something and have to come back 4 weeks later. Okay, item number 2, Electoral Area D, rates and regulations for water, proposed amendments.
Move receipt of the report.
Second.
Okay, on receipt.
Mr. Chair, Wolf will speak to this for us.
Okay, welcome, Wolf.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to pass this to Jesse. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, welcome, Jesse.
Hi, good morning. Hot potato. Yeah, what we're looking to do here, we brought forward a report to ESC and then the board a month or so ago, 2 months ago. We're looking to make some adjustments to the bylaw. Director Lee had made some comments and some recommendations. We've reviewed those recommendations and put forward what we think is our best way to handle what the direction of the board was, and to make the amendments to the rates. Is there any questions about the report, or?
Yes, I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Brenda.
When we were talking about how we can encourage people to report leaks, you know, I was trying to provide incentives for people to report leaks. And this report is, I think, proposing rates that would discourage people from reporting leaks, because it's proposing to increase the fees for turning off water from 35 to 50, to turn the water back on from 35 to 50, labor charges at cost, which is not quantified. It doesn't say what the average labor cost is for going out to deal with a leak on a property or on the outside of a property on the road right of way. So until those things can be, you know, addressed so that they will encourage people to report leaks, such that it doesn't cost them an arm and a leg to report leaks, I would recommend that until we quantify those things, that we leave the rates as they currently are in the bylaw, and refer this back to staff to come up with some answers on how these, you know, basically punitive rates will encourage people to report leaks. I don't understand it. So
if I can, Mr. Chair, I just want to identify item I in the Schedule A, where it says all individual services related to identification and repair of a water leak will not be charged. So I don't know what more incentive there is there than to not charge them. I'll remind you, when you talk in terms of a labor cost, that cost, this is a contract service to Campbell River. So when you see water turned on, water turned off, that is a fee that the city charges us for doing that. So if we do not charge that homeowner, then the whole system will be paid. So we have to pay the city of Campbell River for those services, and either it comes out of the individual or it comes out of the entire system. So again, when you talk about leaks, we are not charging anyone for the identification of a water leak. There's no charge to that.
But for fixing a water leak, you charge them an extra 30% to turn it off and 30% to turn it on. And
no, that's not
and
what
then
that's
the call
concerned
out
for.
rate from Campbell River. So a lot of people that don't have the means, especially through the pandemic where some people have lost work, they don't have the money to pay a lot of money to get that. They'll try to fix it themselves. There will be people who will try to fix it because they don't want to have to pay whatever the at cost rates are from Campbell River. And it's indeterminate in the bylaw. There's no figure in there. So I would just like to more encourage people to get leaks fixed, not just to report them, but to get them fixed and get them fixed properly.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll remind the director again that we do not fix leaks on private property. The majority of these leaks are on private property. They're not on our side of the meter. We cannot legally and would not go fix those anyways. So if a person has a leak on their side, they must fix it and they must pay for it. So this doesn't refer to any of that. We're not going on anyone's property, fixing the leak and charging them for it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think just for clarification, and perhaps Jesse could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the rates that you're seeing in the bylaw going from $35 to $50. The $50, I believe, is a flat rate, whereas the $35 refers to a minimum. And I'm not too sure if anyone has ever been billed the minimum. I believe, my understanding is many of those costs are quite in excess of the $35. So I would ask Jesse to clarify whether that's correct or not, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, that is correct, Tom. The $35 is set as a minimum rate. We do not very often send out the minimum rate. Usually it is in the neighborhood of multiple hundreds of dollars. If someone calls out on a weekend and we have to have operator go out, it's a call out. That's a multiple hour trip out there. And it will cost them $300 or $400 to do that. So what we've tried to do is create a flat rate of $50, which we felt was affordable in relation to what other municipalities are charging for these services, and tried to take out sort of the guesswork so that people will actually call. That rate could be adjusted if we'd like, but it is based on other municipalities' rates.
Anything further?
No, but I'll just be voting against it because I think that, you know, similar to dog licenses where, you know, Area D puts, recognizes that even if you don't have a dog or similarly, even if you don't have a water leak, having your neighbor take care of the water leak, having your neighbor fix it is a benefit to everybody, because everybody's paying increased rates if there's water leaks. And I think it should just go to, like, these fixes should go to general taxation. I think it's a benefit to all of us when people report leaks and they take care of them. And I don't think somebody should be so terrified of reporting leaks and having Campbell River service people come out and charge hundreds of dollars, as you say, to do one repair. That's not encouraging people to report leaks. I just think that in these constrained times where people don't have the extra cash to pay hundreds of dollars, that we should be cognizant of that, and we should probably just put it onto the general taxation to fix a leak, because it's a benefit to all of us if we're not wasting water.
Excuse me,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to clarify that for a second.
Yeah,
Sure. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
as David mentioned, the under section I, we've created it, we've adjusted it so that if your call is regarding a leak or repair of a leak, you will not be charged at all. What we're looking at for turn on and turn off has to do when it's not leak related. If you're going on holidays or if you're planning on installing irrigation, that cost still has to be covered. So, and that one can be multiple hundreds of dollars as well, depending on when you call in. So what we're trying to do is just create a standard rate so that people will call us to come out and do that. But in the case of leaks, there will be no charge, and that will be covered by the general service, if that helps.
okay. Yeah, that does help. Thank you.
Okay, so we're still on receipt, I believe. Is that right, Tom?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anything further on receipt? Anybody opposed? Okay, that is carried. And then on to item B, which is the bylaw to recommend.
No, we've got the B of this item, Mr. Chair.
That's what I said, item B.
2B.
Yeah, 2B. That the committee recommend that a bylaw to amend is what I said.
Sorry, I thought you were moving on to number 3. I would move 2B.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed or any discussion? Anybody opposed? All those in favor, or sorry, don't have to do that. Okay, it's carried. All right, item 3, keeping of livestock, backyard chickens in Area D.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Okay, on receipt. Any discussion? Any opposed? All right. Discussion?
Well, I don't know if this
Well,
is
I heard somebody, I think it was you, Dave. Somebody said something.
Well, Aniko can speak to this, but there is no recommendation in the report unless Director Lee, I'm not sure her thoughts on this. So.
Okay, if you want my thoughts on it now, I can give it now, or on this.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's only receipt, so go ahead.
Yeah, I think that for now we should just receive this. I would like to, once we have the ability to convene open public meetings, I would like to seek more in-person public input into this issue before we proceed further with it. So I would just like to simply refer it, and then planning can set up, proposed bylaw later once the pandemic's behind us, and we can convene a public hearing or a public meeting at least for input. I'm not too stuck on the input I've received so far because it hasn't all been from Area D, and there's only been like 1% of the population altogether, and they haven't even, some of them were taken from areas outside of Area D. So I don't have reliable information to move forward. I need to talk to the public about this. So I would just say, let's just receive it and move on.
All right, so anybody opposed to receipt?
I'm not opposed to receipt, but I'd just like to offer a comment.
Okay, comment.
Thank you. I was had chickens in Victoria 25 years ago on a regular little city lot, and Victoria had it allowed at that time. I don't see the downside of allowing non-rooster fowl anywhere. And in the time I've been here, I've not known residents of Area D to come out on great numbers in personal meetings. And I've been experiencing that this pandemic has allowed for a lot more creativity in terms of online engagement. I might suggest that if the director for the area really wants significant, meaningful engagement, that there's ways of doing that really proactively that might suit her residents better regardless of pandemic. But I think just allowing chickens everywhere is absolutely the way to go. I won't be making any motions to that, but I just really need to state that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on receipt?
Well, just one thing, that, there was a bylaw complaint about chickens that precipitated this petition, and the people who had complained had the chickens escaping from their yard onto their gardens, and they didn't like it. And a lot of people in Area D already have chickens, they have pigs, they have all kinds of animals that it would be, considered to be not in compliance with the bylaw. But if no one complains, and by and large, people are not complaining about their neighbors having a few chickens or whatever, then, then people will be encouraged to keep their animals on their own property. With a bylaw permitting those animals, then I'm wondering whether people would be as vigilant about keeping their animals on their own property. So as it is now, where it's not really recognized or as legal in the bylaw, the fact that it's not legal means that people are if they do have a few chickens or something, they're way more vigilant about them. And maybe that's a better way to be, but I need to hear more from the public about what they want. And also there's certain animals that maybe, it does refer, the bylaw or the discussion refers to livestock. And I don't know how far we go with that. Like, are they going to have goats and, piggeries and things? Like how big? What is the extent of it? We're not just talking about a few backyard chickens, I don't think, in the request, in the petition. It was livestock.
Okay.
So
Okay, the report is clear, it's livestock and backyard chickens. Is there any further discussion on receipt?
Yes,
No.
I would like
Anybody
to
opposed?
I would like to suggest that if the director would like to see consultation, that be directed of staff to support that work. This has already been a year. I don't think it's responsible to have laws that don't support what we want to encourage people to do and then just expect that they'll break them, hope that they'll break them. As I say, I'm not going to be making motions to this effect, but I would, if the director would like to see this investigated and consulted with her constituents, I would suggest that we move on that rather than wait indefinitely for some pandemic situation to change.
Well,
Okay,
I'm not ready
anything
to
further?
move on it. So, I think things are fine the way they are, and I'm not ready to move on it right now. So,
Taking it as not being opposed to receipt.
okay.
Okay. Any further comments concerning opposition to receipt? None. It's carried. On to cannabis production and/or retail sale on Cortez Island.
Move receipt.
Second.
Aniko can speak to this, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. Sorry, I might have froze out there, sorry. If you can hear me, Aniko will speak to this.
We can hear you.
Okay. Is somebody froze now?
Aniko, are you in the room?
Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Through the chair. This report is in response to conversations that have taken place at committee previously with respect to the recent, well, not so recent now, I guess, with legalization of lawful cannabis. The most recent updates that have been done through the regional district were completed for the Area D zoning bylaw, in which we have included language in the bylaw that would permit the lawful retail sale and production of cannabis on lots that allow for those sorts of uses currently. The request from the area director was that staff bring forward some options that would look at a regulatory framework for the Area B zoning bylaw, and those options are provided in the report. What staff is under the impression from the director's previous comments is that there is some appetite for the permissiveness of these uses within the electoral area, and these options are provided for further discussion. Thank you.
If I might, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further comment? Pardon me?
Yes, Mr. Chair, would love to speak to it.
So is this a bylaw that you've requested of staff or that has been requested through this committee?
Through this committee.
Committee.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and speak to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we knew that the legalization of cannabis was coming for years. I would have loved us to be, ready at the time of legalization, and here we are a couple years later, sort of at director's request. I would love to see this be a little bit more proactive. So at this point, my request consistently has been that we develop a bylaw for consideration that does not put any more restrictions on the production and sale of cannabis than already exists with senior government. I understand this is largely the route that Area D went, whereas Area C went on a case-by-case must apply for rezoning basis. I don't think that's appropriate for Cortez. I don't see outlined in this report sort of option A, B, C. It seemed like Annika suggested that perhaps there were options for consideration in this report, so please point me to them if there are. I mean, on the first page, there's options are summarized below, add definitions, update definitions, provide, it seems like all of those are required. So what I'm looking for in a zoning bylaw update is that all of those definitions be updated and added and amended as appropriate to allow production and sale in line with senior government permissions. That doesn't require a case-by-case rezoning for individual pieces of land. And then I would like to take that proposed language update and consult with the community on it. But I think that is in line mostly with what I'm hearing my community wants, and certainly what I said that I would try to be doing at last election. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those, or anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, move on to B. Committee recommended bylaw prepared.
So I wonder if I shouldn't move a slightly amended B that just gives a little bit more direction. If I just have a little bit of latitude to ask through the planning staff. If we move B as presented, it doesn't, in my mind, give direction as to what way we're going. So would it be more useful to say that the committee recommend a bylaw be prepared for the contemplation of lawful cannabis production and sale within Electoral Area B that provides no more limitation than senior government existing regulation, or something to that effect?
Thank you. Through the chair, if I may. I think staff understands the direction here. I don't think it's needed to make further amendments to the recommendation.
Okay, then I would move B as presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a seconder? For a second time, is there a seconder? Hearing none, then it is not on the floor.
So could I ask my fellow committee members what approach would be considered appropriate to update the cannabis situation on Cortez, given that we already have updated it in Area D and C? Because it's not appropriate to leave this indefinitely.
I think that should be an offline discussion. It's not on the agenda. Okay, we are.
I find this to be highly unprofessional.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chair, maybe shut your video off. You seem to be cutting in and out a little bit. You want to maybe turn your video off? It might help.
Is that any better?
Yep. You were cutting in and out there.
Okay. Yeah, it does do that occasionally, and sometimes it works fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not even going to continue with the last comment. C. Item 5, proposed addition to reserve, Lahoose First Nation, report from the CAO with a recommendation.
Move receipt.
Second.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so this came to the board and the board referred it to the First Nations Relations Committee and the Electoral Area Services Committee. So without much direction, so the report is before you without any or much comment or direction from staff. So happy to take direction and instruction from the committee.
I'd happy to speak, Mr. Chair.
And what I'm reading in your report, though, Mr. CAO, is that you are suggesting that more info is needed.
At the committee's will, we get these referrals and, we take direction from the board. The board chose to redirect it to, again, Electoral Area Services and First Nations. And so it's before you and, happy to receive any direction.
Comment, Mr. Chair?
Ditto.
Okay, sorry, I missed those words. Gerald?
Yeah, I just asking permission for making a comment here. Yeah, I think that
Okay.
If we are considering making any further recommendation to the board on this item, that we do need additional information.
Okay, is that a motion? Well, I'm sorry, we're
on the floor at the moment.
Okay, so once we've received it, you can have a subsequent motion if you like.
All right.
Okay, there was a further discussion on receipt.
Yeah, permission to speak, please.
Nilba?
Thank you. I'm not opposed to more information if that's what the committee wants, but I don't really see that more information is going to be particularly additive in the situation. I don't think the regional district is going to provide a whole lot of value in this addition to reserve process. Like the reserve that Cluse already has, it doesn't have any kind of particular services from the regional district. There's no street lighting or sewer or water. That's entirely cared for within the reserve. We certainly provide, emergency services and fire protection, and have a contract around garbage potentially, but that wouldn't be any different on this new reserve if they were going to build residential housing, which isn't even known at this time. So I don't think that we should certainly suggest any concern or denial of the reserve, and I don't know that we'd really have anything to offer of substance that would be of use to the senior governments at this time. So I think just either a support or a non-comment is the way to go at this time, rather than asking staff to develop a bunch more information for our consideration. Thanks.
Okay, and are there further comments before I take a motion from Gerald? Okay, Gerald, go ahead.
Yes, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
sorry.
Comment, which is that you do have a motion on the floor currently, which is to receive the report.
Just getting to that, Tom, thank you. Okay, anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, we'll move on. Subsequent motions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the staff bring back a further report with additional information on this item.
Is there a seconder to that? Do we have a seconder? Okay, it's not on the table. Item 6, request for financial assistance, Mountain Air Avian Rescue Society, Mars.
Move receipt.
A report from Mr. Okay, on receipt, anything? Anybody opposed? Passed. Item B, committee allow a grant made for $500 from Area C.
Move B.
Seconder. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, second.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? All those in favor? Or sorry, anybody opposed? Nobody's opposed. It's passed. Item 7, request for financial assistance, Strathcona Wilderness Institute, CAO's report for receipt.
Move receipt.
You're a seconder.
Mr. Chair,
Folks need more coffee or what?
Mr. Chair,
I'm happy
with
to
Brendan.
second. I'm wondering if Director Lee is with us.
I don't,
Director Lee, can you hear us? Because we can't hear you.
I think she dropped off. I'm looking at the list of participants here, and I'm going to request her to join here again. I think she dropped off.
So that should just be noted in the minutes when that was. So
Yeah.
I would second 7B.
Okay, thank you. Could I also ask, while we're moving along here, that staff text?
Yeah, I
Director
did.
Lee?
I sent her a request to join here, Mr. Chair. So,
Oh,
So,
okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, following the motion, vote on the motion currently in front of the committee, which is to receive this report, I believe Director Lee had asked and the committee had agreed that there would then be receipt of the addenda item, and then the committee can deal with all 3 grant applications together if it wishes. Thank you.
Okay, so that's, you're saying after item 7, we'll do that.
After 7A, it would be appropriate to put on the floor a motion to receive the addendum report from Director Lee.
Okay, so then we'd be doing B plus the other ones from the
Yes.
addendum?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so on receipt for the report, do we have both first and seconder?
Yes, you have a mover and seconder for 7A.
Any opposed? It's carried. Okay, and then we will be moving addendum items up from the bottom to along with item B. So we have B plus the addendum items.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that you next receive the report from Director Lee as stated in section N under addendum items. So that will then be put on the floor for consideration.
Move receipt of the addendum items.
Move receipt of the addendum item.
Second.
I'm sorry. Okay, anybody opposed? All those in favor, or sorry, it's passed. So we now have the addendum items just under the 7B. So shall we do them individually? Is there a problem there?
Mr. Chairman, you can deal with them all individually or all joined at the hip. It's totally up to you.
Okay, up to the committee. Do you want to do them one at a time or all together?
Yeah, I'll move them all together.
Okay,
Sorry, I need clarity on what the motion is, please.
it's item B plus what is in
Right. So,
the addendum.
so just for the record, I think it's really important to state that. So it's 3,000 to the Strathcona Wilderness Institute plus, because there aren't recommendations from Director Lee embedded in this. There's just applications. It's not entirely clear to me that she wants to move the full amount, and she said that she wasn't aware of any time sensitivity. So I'm just wondering from a process point of view, even why this is here now. Consistency would be wonderful, which is not always the case. So I don't know what the director's wishes are here.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could table this until after we deal with Shellneck, and maybe Brenda will be back online there.
Okay, if you'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, I'll move that we table this until we deal with the Shellneck item.
Okay, is there a seconder? We'll need a
Sorry.
seconder.
Seconder to defer or this?
Just to table it until after item
Sure.
J.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, so
Mr. Chair,
7B.
if I can
Hello,
just
it's
interject.
Director Lee.
Oh, yeah, there she's back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi,
Hi.
Telus bumped me off my my site. I don't know why. So I can't get back on to the computer. Is the meeting still going on?
Yep.
Yes, we're actually on your item, Brenda.
Oh,
We're
good.
on item 7, and
Okay.
we were just going to do 7B with the inclusion of your addendum items, but the question came up is that we don't know what those 2 addendum items actually are in the way of amounts or your recommendations or whatever.
Okay.
So if you could
the
just
two,
quickly tell us, C what B is, what would be C and D?
okay, let me look. I'm looking up my agenda on my iPad to see what you're talking about. Sorry about that. I don't know. I tried everything to get back onto the site and closed the computer down and tried to reload everything. It's not working. So,
If your internet's down, I don't know if your iPad's going to be helpful there trying to download the agenda.
I know. Well, okay. So I'll just do a verbal of what I remember from what I submitted to Edith. I submitted Edith a full package of all the information and their financial statements, etc. The grant and aid for the Campbell River Museum was $2,500, and that was to assist them with lots of online programming that they're doing while the pandemic's on. And I can't remember exactly all the names of all the programs. Some of them were school programs, some of them were outreach.
That's fine.
For what they have.
That's fine.
And then the other grant was a $10,000 grant for the Oyster River Enhancement Society, and they submitted a huge package of information on their projects for the coming year. And
It wasn't clear, Director Lee, if your recommendation was for the full amount they'd requested or not. That's all.
Yes, it was. Yes, for both. So $2,500 for the museum and $10,000 for the Oyster River Enhancement Society.
Okay, so we have 3 grants and aid, area D.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually took my own paper copy, and all of the projects they've got listed in Appendix A that in their submission that I gave to Edith, and they have 11 projects planned for this year, and they have each of them costed separately to justify that total $10,000 cost. And I could read them to you if you want me to. There's 11 projects that they're working on.
We only need to know what the amounts are. And
okay.
We're sure that staff will take care of the rest of it.
Okay.
Are people hearing an echo when I talk?
A little bit. Yeah.
Weird. So on item B, C, and D, there was a seconder.
Second, I'll second it.
Mr. Chairman, who made the motion?
I didn't.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Okay, anybody opposed? Those three are passed.
Mr. Chair,
Addendum is,
point of order.
yes. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, on that item on the Clahoos that didn't get a seconder for my motion for a report with additional information, I wonder if now that Brenda's back, it might be reasonable to put that back, see if she would second it.
Point of order.
Okay,
Reconsider.
I'd have to confer with Dave and ask him, first of all, to find out if Director Lee was in attendance during the motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna have to defer to Edie. Boy, there's a lot of echo going on.
There's people that aren't muting their mics. What's happening?
Mr. Chairman, perhaps I can clarify that Director Lee seconded the motion to actually receive the report to do with the cannabis bylaw. So she was certainly present at that time.
This was on the proposed addition to reserve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Item 5. Item
My
5.
apologies.
Yeah, I got bumped off.
Okay, so you weren't there for that.
I got bumped off just before the cannabis issue on Cortez was. I didn't hear what the outcome of that was. I got bumped off.
Okay,
Then
it did
I've
not
asked
receive.
reconsideration of that also, Mr. Chair, if we're going to go backwards.
What's the wish of the board? Are you willing to revisit item 4, cannabis production, item D?
I certainly am. I think procedurally we either go back to the time that Director Lee dropped off and reconsider everything, or nothing, but not cherry pick, please.
Okay, so we're going back to item 4, cannabis production. We've already done A. We're on B. That the committee recommend a bylaw be prepared to contemplate lawful cannabis production and/or retail sales within Area D.
Okay.
And I move that.
Move that.
I will move again.
Second.
And for discussion,
Who moved? First of all, who moved it?
Director Anderson.
Director Anderson, and second?
Lee.
Okay, and discussion.
Thank you.
So,
this is clearly an important matter to update our zoning bylaws. Area D and Area C have already received updates. Area D sort of proactively, I believe, and Area C by way of a specific application, if I'm not mistaken. That leaves Area B as really the only outlier, and I just think this is a really important thing to update so people know where they sit within the scope of the law. And staff understand from this motion that the intention is to create a zoning bylaw update for public consideration that is in line with the permissions already granted by senior. Thank you. Much like the approach in Area D.
Any further discussion? Okay, anybody opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so you're opposed to B. Any further opposition? Okay, it passes. Item 4B passes. Now we're on to proposed number 5, proposed addition to reserve Clahoos First Name.
Yeah, I move the staff bring back a further report to the Electoral Area Committee.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any opposed?
I'm not opposed, but I just for clarity like to know what kind of information Director Wally is looking for, just to help staff in their preparation.
Well, I think that's up. I think that's up to staff to figure out what's needed. We don't need to discuss it here at this table. Does staff need direction?
Well, we're always open to direction if there's some that want to be provided. Otherwise, we'll try and determine what information is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed to the motion? Bring back a report for further information. Okay. Passes. Item 6. Request for financial assistance, Mountain Avian Rescue. We're here for this, Brenda.
Well,
Okay.
I'm not. Are we going back and reconsidering everything, or just?
No, we're on bylaws now, Jay.
Yeah, I thought we were just
Okay.
offering opportunity for motions to be seconded that weren't second, but I don't think going back and redoing everything is
No.
what we do, Mr. Chair.
What I understood we were doing was we were giving a member of our committee cut off inadvertently an opportunity to go back and see what had been missed. And that's why I just asked the question, Director Lee, did you miss the request for financial assistance, Mountain Avian Rescue Society? It was passed. If you don't need to have to say anything, you don't have to.
So just for clarity, Mr. Chair, it's Director Lee's phone that's causing the echo, so John has muted her. I'm not sure if she knows how to unmute it, so we'll have to be patient there. But it's definitely her phone that's causing the echo.
Yeah, I figured it was, but I couldn't see any way to mute her.
Yeah, John
if she
can.
was, okay,
Yeah.
John can do it.
Yeah,
I'm
just press *6.
Okay, so Brenda, did you get that? If you need to mute or unmute,
Okay, I'm no
press
longer muted.
*6.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If you do not need to speak, please press *6 and mute yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go on to J, bylaws. Is that where we left off?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, yeah.
Okay, we already did Brenda's 3 grants and aid. Okay, so we're talking receipt on the CAO's report on bylaws 94-95, rezoning for Shelley.
Move receipt.
Okay, there's a seconder.
Second.
Okay, any opposition to receipt? Seeing none, it has been received. We don't have, like everything seems to have changed on my agenda. There's nothing there, but before we had a whole list of things, I believe. And there was also a delegation on this. But they're not there. Are they at the board or are they here?
Are you referring to this Shellink bylaw, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, didn't we have a list of items?
There's a number of recommendations. So this has been volleyed back and forth between EASC and the board. And so this is just existing recommendations that came from staff on the original report to EASC. So as it stands, staff are presenting these recommendations unless the committee has recommendations
Okay.
otherwise.
I see. So you're saying that the recommendations that we're talking about are actually in your staff report?
Yeah, yes, correct.
Okay.
They stand from a few months.
Yeah, I was for some reason thinking they were actually listed as items on the agenda, but they were not. They're actually in your report.
Yeah, the bylaw recommendations, yeah.
Okay, so I think I better step down from the chair on this one. Brenda, if you'd like to take the chair.
So we're going to get echo if Brenda does it.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
how do I see who wants to talk if I'm on the telephone?
They can just speak up.
Okay,
Yeah,
my computers are all hooped.
Okay, and I just lost my Electoral Services Committee. Hang on one sec here. Okay, so there's still some questions that have to be answered as far as I'm concerned before we can go to whatever the readings, first reading, second reading, and moving on. And there's been just an incredible amount of back and forth by email, etc., to staff, to myself, probably between the applicant staff, a couple with me, and I believe went unanswered. But basically, the issue as far as I'm concerned is that it's not complete yet. It isn't a complete document at this point, and many of the letters that came in to staff, I believe to Dave and to they pointed out a number of things that I have pointed out, and they still haven't changed. Well, way back when we had, I don't even remember what the date was, but it's been probably a couple of years. We actually had a meeting in the downstairs boardroom at the office with planning staff and corporate staff and the applicants and myself. And we talked about a number of things that were in the application that were probably non-starters, and as far as the community was concerned. And this is when, directors were still being asked their opinion on things. And,
Director Lee, sorry, Mr. Abram, can you mute yourself? The echo is really bad. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Director Abram.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I see she's muted. It's got a mute sign on there. Okay, so did you hear what I had to say so far, Dave?
Yeah.
Were you able to hear what I? Yeah.
Yeah, we could hear it.
All
just
right.
that echo. It's much better now.
Okay. So, there were a number of things that were talked about. Just in general terms, we talked about the commercial area, the marina, the campground, the cabins, the sizes, the placements, all of those different things were all discussed as being things that the community had concerns about in the past, and yet they were still in the proposal to go forward. And it's up to the applicant what they want to put forward. But I think that the advice that was being given was that there were a number of things that probably would cause problems for the applicant. Since then, there have been a number of other letters that have come up about things like archaeological sites, whether or not there's been a full provincial archaeological assessment done over the entire property, that there have been pit houses, other artifacts have allegedly been discovered and destroyed by, residents on the island. The other question that keeps coming up is, has there been a traffic study done? I'm not quite sure what we're talking about now, if it's 51 or 54 lots, but somewhere in that neighborhood. I think the average is, I don't know, Aniko and people like that would know better what highways uses as the average number of cars per dwelling or per family. I think it's something like 1.5 or whatever. So even if you just took it at 1, that's another 50 to 60 vehicles on the island at any one time. We have extreme ferry problems, and we're trying to mitigate those with putting in a 2 ferry system, which we've fought for years. We're finally going to get it, but it's 2 years off. So, the loads are untenable on Quadra right now. And lineups are sometimes 2 and 3 hour waits on each. So adding to the traffic, has that been looked at? Has that been considered? So those are the kinds of things, just in general terms, that we talked about. There were little details that I saw changed in the last iteration that came forward to us at the last meeting, that actually went from, if it was just as a hypothetical, I know these were real, but I don't have the exact numbers, so I'm going to say hypothetical. If it was 15 meter donation, it was reduced to a 10 meter donation. Those kinds of things. They were smaller rather than larger as far as what was being given to the community in the way of greenland or greenways and parks, etc. But the other big issue that is being thrown at me probably at least a dozen times a day is the fact that people want a public hearing. They want a in-person public hearing because this is the biggest, without exception, the biggest application change on Quadra Island, and it could be a complete game changer for the island. So people want to be able to know that their voices are being heard at a public hearing where there's staff present and there's other residents present. The way the virtual public hearings are working, we've had, I think, 3 on Quadra Island. They were all simple, and they were not well attended. In fact, they had no attendance at, I think, 2 of them, except for the applicant. And the complaints that I'm getting is that it's just too darn difficult for people to get on to a virtual public hearing, or to call in, or to be called on, or whatever. And I don't know if any of these things are factual. I'm telling you what's being told to me. Okay, and as the director for the area, I have to pass that along to you as staff so that you know what's being said out here in the area that I represent. And I'm going to be the one that hears about it for God knows how long. So, I just want to make it clear that I'm not in favor of moving forward with this at this time until all of those questions that I've asked have been answered. And secondly, even once those are answered, I am certainly not in favor of going to any form of public hearing other than when it's safe to do so, to have it in a public setting in person. And that would be possibly, I don't know, August, September. The way the virus or vaccine is moving out and the way we're being told we're going to be the lucky ones on little islands and remote places that are going to get all done at once, not by age group. That will speed things up considerably. But safety and health are my primary concern, and having the people that I represent feel that they have been heard and they can, legitimately go home and say, yep, I got to tell them what I had to say. And I got to hear what other people had to say and possibly come up with other things that I needed to say. That's what usually happens at a in-person public hearing. If it's just a write-in, it's what you're thinking at the time. You write it in, you send it to the planners, and then possibly on the day of the public hearing even, you might think of 10 more things that you forgot to say. Well, you don't have any chance now unless you can get online. And don't forget, because we don't have Connected Coast in place yet, which I'm hoping will happen any day now, we have really lousy internet. And we just did a massive survey of households to get screenshots of what people are actually receiving. And in many cases, they would be absolutely unable to attend virtually on a computer. So that, in itself, I think begs the question, is this even legal? Because right at the beginning of the public hearing, we say, anybody that considers their interests affected have a right to speak, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill, the script. And if we are eliminating people, not intentionally, but inadvertently, people are unable to come to a public hearing and state why they feel their interests are affected, then I feel we have invalidated that public hearing right there. And, I have a really hard time with that, because we've always had very, very well-attended public hearings, especially on big issues. This one's huge. So I'm not quite sure what it is that we're doing here, Dave. I mean, have we received the report? Oh, I'm not in the chat. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Brenda, have we?
The report's been received.
Okay. So from there, I'm not sure what is being expected.
Have we received the report?
Yes, Madam Chair, the report has been received.
Okay, so we can move on to recommendations.
We can.
And where are the actual recommendations?
Tom, could you put that up?
Would like to speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, Director Anderson, go ahead.
I think there are two separate things I'm hearing from Director Abram. One is about, content. Do we move forward with the proposal as presented or modified? And the other is timing. I think it's important to separate them. I know that this proposal has had a huge amount of back and forth over the last, months and decade. And I appreciate that the director is really trying to, get this, seems like get this application as palatable to the community as it can, or, substantively clear as it can, or I'm not entirely sure. But what I did really hear from the applicant was they wanted this to move forward as presented. And I'm beginning to feel quite uncomfortable with the amount of reaching into the detail of this that the committee is feeling it has the license to do, because ultimately it's up to the applicant to put an application forward for consideration. And if the community and the committee and the board are not supportive, so be it. But I'm not really comfortable indefinitely going back and forth on this one, if in fact this is what we've been asked to proceed with after so much back and forth. So I would really like to see recommendations 2, 3 through 5 stand and sort of reaffirmed for the board. and then we can have a separate discussion about 6 and the timing of a public hearing, and if it's the will of the committee to go into, delay it until, come back to the committee for consideration in July or something, so be it. But I'm not comfortable delaying everything indefinitely. So I would like, I'm not at this very moment, I understand, Madam Chair, you've got process, but I would like to reaffirm motions 2 through 5. Because it went to board and then we referred it back here. So there's nothing coming to the board.
Brenda, you're the chair.
Okay, so I'm sorry, my phone keeps cutting in and out. I don't know if
we keep, Director Lee, we keep muting you because if you're not speaking, we need you to
But when you mute me, I can't hear what the people are saying. That's what's going on. Like I'm getting very sketchy dribs and drabs of what people are saying, and I don't know who's, going to speak next. I'm having a hard time. And if this is any indication of what it's like for the poor people that have to attend a public hearing and, have trouble connecting and can't get on board and can't, like these virtual meetings, they are a disaster. If you get bumped off your computer, you can't get through, and that's not good for a public hearing.
Can I suggest
that
the chair does hand the chair off to somebody else for the moment?
Sure, I can do that. Like, it might be better to hand it off to, hand it back to the chair and he can appoint somebody, because I can't hear half of what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So, Mr. Chair, you're back in the chair. Appoint somebody else to be the chair.
Okay, Director Wally, would you accept being the chair of the recommendation section?
Thank you.
Good.
If we could just ask Mr. Yates, could you just bring me up to date? We've gone through receipt on this. That motion's been carried. And where are we now?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, the staff report has been received. What you're seeing on the screen right now that I am sharing is a number of recommendations that were made to the board. Before the board could deal with them, they were referred back to the Electoral Area Services Committee for consideration. So I'm not sure what the committee's feeling is on this. I mean, you could, for example, just say we support numbers 2 through 5, but we want to talk about public hearing issues, whatever. I mean, that's just an example.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Do we have a motion currently on the floor?
No, you didn't.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd like to move that items 2, 3, 4, and 5 be referred back to the applicants until the issues that I brought up in my grand spiel are dealt with, things like highway study, archaeological study. One thing I forgot to mention was phasing of the sewer was mentioned in the last one. We have no idea what that looks like, and we need to know that first up front. So those 2, 3, 4, and 5 need to be referred back with further information to come forward to this committee before I can say that I feel comfortable going to the public with them.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, is it the intent of the mover that staff listen to the recording and pick out the points that Director Abram said and ask for further information from the applicant?
I guess if that's your wish, you could do it that way.
Well, it's whatever your wish is.
I would much prefer a clear motion that spoke to the information desired.
Mr. Chair?
Well, I'm sorry, but I don't have in front of me deleting words part 26 in the preamble and substituting therefore words part 14. You know, those kinds of things are little picayune details that do not matter.
Let me just
Unless,
for a moment, Jim, you've moved items 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. Do we have a second?
Well, Mr. Chair, he moved them with caveats attached to them.
Can I ask a question, procedural question, Mr. Chair?
can we find out if we have a seconder first?
Well, we need a seconder.
Well,
We
My
need to know what the
problem-
motion is.
Mr. Chair.
Can you clarify the motion?
Director, Director Lee?
Pardon me? Pardon me?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Okay. I have not got any visuals for seeing the agenda. I don't even know what those things are, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know what they are. Can't read them. I don't have screens. I only have a telephone. I have no copy of those recommendations. And because of that, and because of the problems with the technical things this morning, I would just say let's defer this till the next meeting.
Is that a motion?
I can't vote blind. I can't second motions. I can't even see.
Are you making a
can't
motion,
see them.
Director Lee?
Yeah, I move to defer this whole item till our next meeting. I can't vote on things I
We have a
can't
second
even
for that?
read.
I would second deferring items 2 through 5.
Any
I
opposition?
don't even know what 2 through 5 is, though, unless you read
Yeah.
them out to me.
All right, I'll read them. Item 2, that bylaw number 94 be amended by deleting the words part 26 preamble and substituting therefore the words part 14. Number 3, that bylaw number 94 be further amended by deleting Schedule A in its entirety and substituting a new Schedule A to bylaw number 94 attached to January 5, 2021 report from the Chief Administrative Officer. Number 4, that the bylaw number 95 be amended by deleting the words part 26 in the preamble and substituting therefore the words part 14. Number 5, that bylaw number 95 be further amended by deleting Schedule A in its entirety and substituting a new Schedule A to bylaw number 95 attached to the January 5th, 2021 report from the Chief Administrative Officer.
And just for clarity, Director Lee, these are the motions that that this committee passed a month ago on to board 2 weeks ago and was referred back to us. It's nothing new.
Well, I got cut off even through the reading of those motions, so I don't have anything in front of me to be able to fall back on, and I don't feel comfortable voting on anything. I can't see it. And
All right,
I just think we should defer it till the next meeting.
Do
Till
we
we
have a
get these
second?
technical things.
Mr. Chair, I would gladly defer to Director Lee because of her technical difficulties and just say defer the whole thing or refer the whole thing back to the Electoral Area Services Committee, the next Electoral Area Services Committee.
Mm-hmm.
On deferral, call the question.
Can I ask one question before we take the vote? Tom, or can I make a subsequent motion to refer it, or do I have to make that first?
Mr. Chairman, if the motion to defer this to the next meeting passes, then I don't believe there's any further business for the committee to deal with on this particular item at this time.
Okay, could I then ask the indulgence of the committee to allow me to make a subsequent motion prior to referral that would inform the report that comes back to us at the next meeting, so that staff would have some idea of what it is we're looking for.
Director Lee, are you comfortable holding off on your motion?
I'll follow Director Abrams' lead on that.
All right, go ahead, Director Abrams.
Okay, so my motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, the motion on the floor to refer isn't to ask staff to come back with any further information. Sorry, it is rather just deferral. at which point I would
No,
think next meeting, we would have a more substantive conversation. If we wanted to refer for more information, that would be fair. But at this point, the motion on the floor is to simply just bring the exact same thing back in a month.
Could staff please tell us which word was used, refer or defer?
Mr.
I heard
Chairman, the motion on the floor is to defer this item to the next meeting of EASC.
Okay. So I ask you once again, then, is it appropriate prior to deferral? It hasn't been deferred. Is it appropriate to make a motion asking staff to include some information for our next meeting?
I would say it's not appropriate, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, under your procedure bylaw, the deferral motion must be dealt with before further considerations of motions, etc. So the motion on the floor is to defer this. I do believe, as chair, that you must have the question on deferral answered before further business can be conducted.
Okay, did the motion get deferred and seconded?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear the seconder ever. Anyway, okay, so we're just talking about deferral. Who's chairing, Gerald?
I am. Are we ready to call the question on deferral? All right, is there anyone opposed? I'll carry that carried. And I'll turn it back to you, Director Abel.
Okay, thank you very much. 1 second, get back to wherever we were.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe.
Okay, so we're on.
I do believe, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, the only thing left is termination of this meeting, and then there's a separate meeting waiting in the wings for to deal with a closed session item, I believe.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion for termination.
Move termination.
Okay, so we terminate this meeting, Tom, and then we go to the restricted or in camera.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there should have been a separate email sent to each director inviting them to a closed session of the EASC.
Okay, so just give everybody.
Do I just stay on the phone?
John, what should Director Lee do?
I'll ask Edith to text her the information to join.
Thanks.
Okay.
Are we terminated?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm out of here.